I kind of developed the philosophy of be a leader, inspire people, say, here's what we can achieve. And it's your job to achieve it. So I think in a founder, someone who's identified a problem they can solve, okay? If they can't explain it in 30 seconds and get me excited about it, that is a real telltale. They're trying to explain the problem and the domain 5 minutes into it and you haven't heard, what is it you do? I'm not saying somebody needs to be a salesperson, but they need to be able to say, look, I have identified a huge TAM because this does not work. And this is a huge market if we can solve this problem.
I'm Damon Lembi, and this is the Learn It All podcast, the show for leaders who know that lifelong learning is your ultimate advantage. Joining me in a moment is the legendary operator, Ray Lane. Ray is one of the driving forces behind one of the biggest turnarounds in modern tech history with Oracle in the early 90s. And from there, really shaped Silicon Valley as a managing partner for 14 years at Kleiner Perkins, and now is the co-founder and managing partner at GreatPoint Ventures. This is an absolutely amazing conversation. Ray starts off by telling us his first experience in leadership was when he was elected college president of his fraternity, and some of the learning lessons there that got him out of being an introvert, and what he took from that into his experience in the real world, which started off at IBM. And he had so many great learning lessons there and stories he shares. Then he left IBM to go to EDS to work for Ross Perot. And incredible stories that he tells, going from buttoned up IBM to, learn in the heat of the battle at EDS. And then he got the call to come to Oracle. Everybody told him not to come to Oracle. And he'll tell us why he did, what his first conversation was with Larry Ellison that really got him super excited and joined Oracle at a time where they were almost on the verge of bankruptcy. Another part of my conversation that I really enjoyed with Ray is when he breaks down the difference between a founder, a CEO, and an entrepreneur. From what he learned at Kleiner Perkins to now being the managing partner at GreatPoint Ventures. And I love where he shares what he looks for in founders. And I think this is a fantastic conversation for everybody in leadership at any kind of level, and especially for those of you who are looking to be a founder or an entrepreneur. You're not going to want to miss an opportunity to learn from Ray Lane. So Ray, your first leadership role was being elected president of your college fraternity back in the day. When that first happened, what was your original reaction to that? And what did it immediately force you to learn?
My reaction was total surprise. I really had never been a leader of anything. In high school, I was always kind of in the top 10% of my class and did, various honoraries and things like this. I was kind of the second round to be picked and things like that. So I went off to college and joined a fraternity and didn't know much about what was going to happen. And my first semester sophomore year, they asked me to be president of the fraternity. We had tons of problems. We were subscale, like 25 brothers, weren't paying our bills, just a tons of problems. And I said, why me? And well, you seem to be a serious guy and want to fix some of these problems, and you speak out in meetings. And so here's the job. So I was totally surprised by it. It was the first time, as you mentioned, in my life that someone had recognized to say, hey, we'd like you to be the leader for whatever reason. And it kind of changed me. Said, okay, I have a job to do now. I want to be one of the brothers, but I can't just be a fraternity guy and do the stupid things that fraternity guys do. I have to think about, money we take in, housing capacity, budgets, hiring bands on weekends and things like that. So I had to kind of think about it like that as opposed to just be a brother and have fun.
And it was a big change. So was there any big mistakes you made that you learned from there that you were able to carry on the rest of your career?
I set a goal, whether it was right or not, I don't know, to scale the fraternity. Well, I thought we needed to be over 100 people to really, be fiscally responsible, to fill up the house. And so we're just too small. And so I immediately went to a methodology to try and recruit more, not just simply, go to freshman classes and try to compete against other fraternities, but maybe go to junior colleges that were coming in. They were coming in after 1 or 2 years and recruit people. So we recruited a few people from different community colleges or junior colleges that were transferring in, and they would go back and bring other people in that were behind them, 1 or 2 years behind them. So we built the fraternity house very quickly to about 125 brothers, and to this day, we still are very, very close brothers, very close in terms of, being lifelong friends. It was a real game changer for all of us. We all felt like we were part of something special, and it was in the '60s. It was something special. They've tried to recreate it in the '80s. It worked for a period of time, but it was a once in a lifetime event that the right people came together with the right ideas and we became leaders on campus. I hired a house mother. Our house mother that was there when I became president of the house retired, and I hired a new house mother that thought was going to be terrific. She had all the appearances and just we were proud of her, really proud of her. Every Sunday we'd bring her down to brunch. Everybody would put a coat and tie on. It was all turns out she was an alcoholic. It was very tough to tell beforehand, but it's the last thing you want in a fraternity house is someone who has an addiction. And so at 19 years old, I am firing a 65-year-old woman. That was intimidating for me. Taught me a lesson. Well, do your homework. Make sure you do a lot of reference checks, and take responsibility.
Yeah, take responsibility, and it's never easy to terminate someone. But I really like what you said earlier as part of a leader to be something bigger. How have you been able to use that moving forward in your career? That getting people on board to understanding that there's more than just going in and doing a job.
So there were other things that happened in college that I think were really great to build my confidence that I was a leader. I think if it was just one and done, be the president of fraternity, that's really not, you can't really take that out and say that means you're going to be president of the United States or you're going to be, CEO of a big corporation. So there were other honoraries I became. I became senior class president, became a leader of a men's honorary on campus. And so I just kind of liked being able to sit with people, influence them with my ideas and kind of change things. But I also liked enjoying college, enjoying the academics, but also enjoying the fraternity life. I think that was very beneficial in socializing me and allowing me to be comfortable with people I've never met before and sit in a discussion and interact with people. So I came out of college and I was recruited by IBM. IBM was looking for people with technical degrees. I had a math degree, and they wanted people that had been in leadership positions. So their perfect profile was someone that played team sports, was captain of the debate team, and had an engineering or math degree. So they loved that profile, and so I guess I kind of fit that profile. Math majors don't have many opportunities. You can go for an insurance company and be an actuary. I went interviewed with the CIA to solve problems, and it was actually the CIA interview where the guy said, "Yeah, I'll give you a job, and you'll sit behind a desk, and you'll be solving problems, and you will hate it. Uh, I recommend you interview with IBM. They're looking for people that have leadership qualities." And so I took the job with IBM, and and everyone at IBM hears in the first year you're there that you can be CEO of IBM.
It's a lot of CEOs.
I only heard it from me. Okay. But everybody hears the same thing. You can be CEO of IBM. It was IBM's formula for really getting you addicted to the culture of IBM. And we were addicted. It was the number one company in its field, and it had wonderful people. The people were just, all felt, like I just described, had technical backgrounds, but very socialized and had leadership qualities in their background. And I was pulled away. I was drafted and went in the Army for 2 years during the Vietnam era. And I came back to IBM, and I came back more mature at 23, 24 years old, saying, okay, I've got this. I've got this. I will take on the challenge of whatever they give me to basically do the challenge they lay out, which is every year and a half, you get promoted into a leadership position, and then you move again, you move again, move again. So you become staff, then you become line, staff, line. So you go to running a branch, running a region, running a, and eventually you become CEO maybe someday. It wasn't in, 8 years into that, the guy who interviewed me and hired me into IBM left IBM after 23 years and went to work for Ross Perot at EDS. So he called me. He said, "I'd like you to join me." And so I had two questions. I said, first of all, why me? Because he left when he hired me. He moved on with IBM, and I never saw him again. So why me? He says, "You're the second smartest guy I've hired." So I've already called the first guy, and he said no. So I said, "Okay, it's fair. Thank you for being honest." He said, "Look, I think you can do this." And I said, "I'm going to be CEO of IBM, so I don't think I'm interested." He laughed and he said, "Yeah, I thought the same thing. 23 years later, I was running a region." So you got a long way to go in the IBM system to get to where you want to go. I'm going to save you 10 years. Come to work here. Ross wants to invest in a new business. You run it. Ross has never invested his own money in the business. He's always used customer money when he started BDS. And so this is a chance to, first of all, become a VP at 30 years old, run a business on your own, report pretty high in the organization, one level away from Ross Perot. So I went to Dallas and I spent time with Ross. That was a game changer. I didn't know people like him existed. Everybody to me so far had the IBM face on, the IBM suit on, the IBM, everybody, the same answers from everybody. It was very homogenous. Where Ross just had those steel gray eyes and would look right through you and say, why do you think you're so good? What makes you think, and why am I sitting here with you talking to you right now about, tell me why you're so good. And I'd spend 15 minutes telling him why I'm good enough for this job and I can do it. And it'd say, well, you explained why IBM can do this job, but not why you can do this job. It was really interesting. And I said, wow, I want to be here. I want to work for somebody like this.
How did you feel like you did in that initial interview with him?
I asked the guy who brought me there, I said, how did I do? And he says, Ross said, shave the mustache, get some tie shoes, and come to work Monday. I said, but how did I do? He said, well, he wouldn't be telling you to come to work Monday if you didn't do
Right.
You didn't do well. So I came in, I built a business, hired a lot of people. So I learned a lot, learned how to hire people, learned how to run a P&L, learned how to, drive big contracts. Our contracts with most of the customers were $10 million contracts or more. These were mega contracts to run their IT facility. And so, learned some politics at EDS. It was like knife fights. IBM, there were no knife fights. Everybody was strong, A player, and you had to work for what you got at EDS. I was there at the time that Ross took 2 prisoners out of the jails in Iran, in Tehran, and of course, my office was on an executive floor with the guy that ran international, a guy that ran healthcare, and Ross was a floor above us. And so the international office, it was interesting. There was always activity going in and out of that office. Bill Gaden was the name of the guy that ran international. Always activity going out of his office, especially at 5, 6, 7 at night. Well, what they were doing was keeping the phone lines open 24 hours a day, instructing people. And then after it all happened, and he hired General Bull Simon to take a team of EBS people, 7 people, one worked for me. He disappeared. People would call me and say, he didn't come to work today. He didn't come to work today. He's not, third day, he's not come to work. I called his wife. She says, don't worry about it. I had no idea. And so he was one of the 7 that went into Tehran, went into the prison and bailed out. Paul and Bill were the two guys that they put. Ross went in himself weeks before that and did the reconnaissance for the whole mission, and then hired Bull to do it, and then took in EDS employees because they were all ex-Green Beret or the EDS in those days was hiring people like that. It's all documented in a book called On Wings of Eagles. It is, I've read the book 3 times. It is absolutely true. Everything in that book is actually true. It reads like fiction. Every word is true in that book.
Let me ask you this. You said at EDS, you learned all this stuff. How did you learn it? Was it just through trial and error, or did you have mentors? How did you go about that?
It's trial and error. In fact, I commented, coming from IBM, in the first couple of weeks, I said, okay, do we have a management book? At IBM, there's a blue book. It's called a blue book. And this is the how-to book. So you got a new job. You go to a region and you're the first line manager, say sales manager for the region. Here's the book. What do I do as a sales manager of the region? It's all rote. It's all there. EDS didn't have anything like that. You basically just either watched people work or you made it up as you went along. And I think that was hugely beneficial to me to kind of, here's a gun, follow me into the war. I'll tell you when to pull the trigger. I'll point to the enemy. That's the way. Now, we hired people that were primarily ex-military. So these are people that were taught to lead in battle. So they were either enlisted people or they were officers that had a certain discipline, a way of doing things. And we wanted people that could develop software or that could operate. They go on site with a large customer, run their IT installation, and we would, so we were operators, and we'd operate the whole facility more efficiently than they could do it themselves. And so that lasted that had lasted through the 70s, maybe the late 60s and 70s as Ross grew the business, grew EDS. But as Vietnam ran down and there weren't as many military people to hire coming out, we had to now go to the college campus. Well, EDS was not built to go to the college campus. White shirts. I mean, Ross came from IBM, right? Very strict. You wear a white shirt and a suit and, nothing fancy that would distract the customer, have the customer say, nice earrings you have, or I love the purple suit you're wearing, or whatever. It's like you're there to be a businessman that is there for a particular purpose, and so no distractions. And Ross really had built a culture of why we were so proud of that. At IBM, we wore white shirts and suits, but we were starting to kind of loosen those rules a little bit. But at EDS, it was pretty strict. Even operators that were inside the data center would be wearing coats and ties. And so now that we go to the college campus in the 70s, we look ridiculous. We absolutely, we'd like to hire you, but you've got to put a white shirt on, a tie and tie shoes and all that. I was one of the people that really argued for now it's time to have, kind of a new set of rules, a management book or something that would kind of loosen the reins a little bit and we'd be more attractive to the college graduate like we were to the military graduate. And that all worked. Took a time for transition. We went to colleges like Texas A&M first because that was easier to recruit from. But eventually we were able to go to all college campuses. And eventually we put on colored shirts and loafers and, we looked like normal human beings.
When you were at EDS and let's say made a big mistake about something and you had to come speak to Ross about it, how do you handle it?
It was intimidating. My division was responsible for customers that were in manufacturing, distribution, retail, and transportation. I thought we needed software, because EDS didn't have any and didn't have the knowledge to build say, manufacturing software, supply chain software, things that manufacturers use and retailers use. And so we bought a package. And I was somewhat worried that if we spent money to buy this software package and it was the wrong thing. And EDSers we love bespoke software. So we didn't even use IBM's operating system on the mainframe computers. We wrote our own operating system. So we didn't use MVS or didn't use, any of the operating systems IBM would provide you with the hardware. We wrote our own because it was more efficient. Well, imagine using packaged software developed by somebody else. This happened to be called Arista, and imagine, when the developers kind of jump into that, and say we can make this much better. So I went to Ross and I said, look, I think we've done our homework here. I think it's going to work. We've got a couple of customers that are ready to sign up for it, but I was just trying to kind of prepare him for if this doesn't work. Okay, I take the responsibility, but I want you in the boat with me a little bit more.
And how old are you? 32?
32, yeah. He says, "Look, I get it." He said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "Don't worry about it." He said, "You're doing the right thing. This is all new for us. We're used to regulated industries, healthcare, government. So you're putting your toe in new water in an unregulated industry. Every customer is going to be different. Just come and see me more frequently about how it's going." So he was very supportive and was encouraging the whole way. So so I learned. I think I certainly took the IBM out of me. It made me think for myself. I learned how to deal with intimidation. I learned how to hire good people and fire good people or fire bad people. Learned how to build a business, essentially. I would have never had that experience. I mean, IBM would have been another 20 years. And then I'm not really building the business. I'm really contributing to a division that would be a part of a bigger business. And so I really felt like it gave me at a very young age the ability to run the show. Ironically, I got recruited away from EDS to go to Booz Allen in Hamilton. People say, wow, you're running a business and why go? I expected my guy that recruited me to EDS to become president of EDS. He did not become president of EDS. Ross picked a guy named Mort Meyerson. Mort ran the healthcare business. And so the guy he picked to run all of the commercial businesses, banking and all that, which I fell into, was kind of a joke. And he said, I said, things are going to change. It's no longer the Ross encouragement, build it and build it big, be bold. It was like, you know, I think this guy makes too much money, and I think this is, your organization is too big, and it was just constant conversation. So when the inquiry by a search firm came along to go to Booz Allen, I'd never thought about joining a consulting like McKinsey or Booz Allen, and I went to my guy that recruited me to EES, and I said, "What do you think about this? I got an opportunity to go." And of course, he said, I don't want you to go, but I have an MBA from Ohio State, and I couldn't be hired by Booz Allen. I'll never forget these words. And, said they hire people from Harvard and Stanford with MBAs when they're 28, 29 years old. If you have a chance to get into Booz Allen, take it. And I'm getting into Booz Allen as a principal only because of my experience, real-time experience with IT, with technology. And they needed somebody to kind of be the number 2 guy in Chicago for this. So I said, okay. I went. We moved to Chicago, and immediately after I, okay, I'm the principal. There's a partner that runs the practice. The the partners in Dallas found out that I had hired on in Chicago, but I had a home in Dallas. They started recruiting me internally to come run the West, which meant San Francisco, LA, and Dallas. I said, wow, this my wife was very pleased with this to go back to Dallas. So I took it. And, in 12 years, I became the partner, senior partner, ran the whole technology business worldwide. It's about a fourth of Booz Allen's business. Was on the board, on the executive committee, and I thought the next step would be to be the CEO of Booz Allen. There were only 9 CEOs in 100 years, and that became my goal. It was finally the goal of being a CEO, and I got this recruiter call about Oracle. So anyway, I'll stop talking. You can ask
No,
questions.
that's great. One thing I want to point out that you brought up earlier, the reason why you left EDS, or a big reason for why you left, was because you had a shitty manager. And I think that that is so important for us leaders, CEOs, or just frontline managers. You will lose great people if you don't take care of them, because talented people like you, Ray, can get a job somewhere else. They don't need to put up with that stuff.
No question. Someone famous said this. I don't know if it's somebody that was close to me at EDS or somebody out of a book, but said people leave for context. They are recruited away for content. Everyone that is, you know, leaving because of context. It's a shitty manager. I just tired of this job, whatever. They're loose in the saddle, so they start looking. They're not going to go unless there's something, content wise, that brings them in. That's an exciting opportunity, you know. And so that certainly was my case. This was, this guy that I reported to, that I never angled to report to, 2 years later was fired by Mort Myerson. So he was, and Mort, in the New York Times, based on when I was president of Oracle later, Mort Myerson said, one of the biggest mistakes EDS did was losing Ray. And we should have convinced him to stay. And this guy, I don't want to mention his name because I'll never forget his name. It just was, I couldn't get through to him. I just couldn't get through to him. He didn't understand what we were doing and trying to build like Ross did. And Ross was, I think, turned the company over to Mort Myerson. And Mort didn't have time to fool around with our business at all. But later on, Mort and I became very, very good friends. He's an LP of our fund. He passed away last year, but Mort was a superhuman being.
So when that opportunity came in through the recruiter, talk about exciting opportunities. Was it an exciting opportunity for Oracle at the time?
No, it wasn't. So I took the call. I was at a worldwide partner meeting of Booz Allen in Washington, D.C. I get this call. I return the call. It was John Thompson of Heidrick and Struggles. And John is well known. He was vice chairman of Heidrick. And he discusses the opportunity. Oracle had a wonderful run in the 80s. It started in 1978, went public in 1986, was doubling every year. And in 1991, crashed. Absolutely crashed. It had 2 competitors that were outrunning it, Sybase and Informix. Even IBM was starting to outrun them. They did not have a programmable server as a product. It was just a relational database, and Sybase had introduced a programmable server, so you could put, triggers and stored procedures in the server, in the database. And so we were falling behind competitively. Our sales force had no rules about what they sell, how they sell it, and treated customers really poorly. And so after I learned all this, I did my homework. I told him, I said, I don't think I'm interested in this. We're used to consulting and running a business that is fairly high level, consulting to the CEO about how to build a technology advantage. And Oracle's on at the other end. They're at the lowest level selling databases. And so I don't think I'm very interested in this. And he said, well, why don't you go meet Larry Ellison and see if you can sell him a consulting assignment?
Now, when you were going in to meet with Larry before this first meeting, did you think you were walking into a conversation similar to your first conversation with Ross Perot?
Yes. Yeah, exactly like that. In the case of EDS, I had a sponsor. So I had a guy who had just been hired to run all the commercial business of EDS saying, this is my guy. So that helps a lot when you walk in to Ross's office. I didn't have that. I was, who knows, I was one of many candidates going to see Larry. And so I probably was. And so So I just went out to meet Larry. I had no goal other than that, just to meet Larry and have a conversation. We spent 4 hours together, and we found out for the last 2 hours of that conversation, he's trying to sell me on coming to Oracle, and I'm trying to sell him on me. I mean, it was like, wait, we have to shut up and listen to each other, okay? Because we're just now, selling each other. But I think it was because we were both excited about what could be. I was excited about, okay, well, I'm going to be president of a company, okay, which I liked better than being CEO of something because I didn't really understand how to run a software company, certainly. Larry was really understood how to run a software company, knew how to develop competitive products, and the company had just lost its way, especially its sales organization and support organization. It was a dog's breakfast. Everybody was doing things differently in different parts of the world and just had no ability to scale.
Did you ask him any tough questions though during that conversation about why they are falling apart?
Absolutely. I said, why has the stock fallen from like 35 to 14? Actually, it fell down to 4 in 1991. It was back up to 14 or 13 when I came in. I said, so what happened? He said, we're a mess. I think our customers have lost confidence in us. There's better products out there, which we're working on. So we expect this year you come in here and the first thing you're going to do is help announce to customers this new product called Oracle 7. So he got me excited about what could be if we turn this around. We still were the biggest by far. In terms of revenue, we were still bigger than Sybase and Informix. And then I told him, I said, well, what about business applications? I said, you're in the database business. Why just stay in the database business? Why not offer business applications? Oracle had a big customer called SAP, where they used our database to build these business applications. Why aren't we doing that? Why don't we build the business applications and offer the whole package? In fact, why don't we, coming from Booz Allen being a consultant, why don't we offer consulting services to implement it? Why are we giving all this business to Accenture and all that? So he said, you kill Sybase and I will give you the green light to build anything you want. That's what got me. He said, you kill Sybase and the business applications, we'll build those. Consulting, make it as big as you want. So everybody I talked to, as I was doing my diligence, said, don't do this, Ray. Don't do this. This is, Oracle's done. They're going down the tubes. Larry got a real checkered past. So you may get out there and 6 months into it, you get fired. I talked to a lot of my clients, like Frito-Lay and, Merck, and don't come back here. If you go to Oracle, don't come back and try to sell me anything. General Motors and General Electric had never bought anything from Oracle. It was like redlined. I knew it was a challenge. Even my wife said, I'm not moving to California.
So what made you make the leap? Was it strictly your conversation with Larry? Was it, I mean, I know you had a great initial conversation with him, but still, when you get everybody telling you, don't do this, this is a sinking ship, you did it anyways.
Two things. The conversation with Larry, I was thinking about on the plane ride all the way back to Dallas. He said two things. He said, look, I'm going to put you in charge. And I said, you understand that if you don't come through, if I want to do something you don't like and you stop me, that I can go right back to Booz Allen. That's just the easiest thing in the world.
What did he say to that?
He said, I get it. I think I understand it. I'll let you do it. And I said, I'm going to test you on this. So, and then the second thing on the plane ride is I'm doing the calculation on, he tripled the number of stock options that the board had authorized. He said, I want you to really think about this. And he tripled the stock. So I did the math on if I move the stock price from 15 to 25, that money does not exist with Booz Allen. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. There was one other colleague of mine, Robert Shaw, who worked for me at Booz Allen. He was the partner that ran the San Francisco office. And when I told him, I said, in confidence, I'm looking at this thing, and I know it's a big deal if I leave Booz Allen, and so I want you to keep it confidential. He said, you're thinking about becoming the president of Oracle? Take me with you. So we turned that thing around. This is big deal. So he was very influential on me because he was the one person who understood who Oracle was and what Oracle could be. And he just kept, every day he'd call me and said, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? So I decided to go against all advice, my best friend, my wife, my colleagues, everything, but based on Robert Shaw and what I thought I could do in turning it around. And the first thing I did was hire Robert, bring him in. I said, Robert, there's about 300 consultants here. I'm putting you in charge of the services business, the consulting business. Maybe we can grow this thing to 1,000 people. He grew it to 18,000 people in a $3 billion business. So it was, I knew I had the turnaround done and on its way. I knew that maybe 6 to 7 months, but it was in the third quarter, so the 9th month, that I actually had some data to prove it. So I would talk to media and analysts all the time. And I said, give me time, guys. I can't answer your question today. Give me time. I would go to customers, rip up their contracts. I said, we're starting over. I took a team. I said, you're not going to go home. You're not going to see your families for 6 months. And I took a team of people. We're going to rewrite the rule book of how salespeople have to behave at Oracle and how they're going to handle customers. No one is ever going to be able to sell the whole price book at a 90% discount, and they get 5 times their quota achieved. They make a lot of money. The CIO says, well, I just got a 90% discount on every product Oracle has, but nobody comes back to see him again, ever again. It's just like it was the wild, wild west. And so that is my wife now, who worked at Oracle 6 years before me. She said, this place was a lot of fun before you got here.
So Larry gave you a heads up of what things were going to look like and how bad they were. Were they worse than you thought they were going to be?
Much worse, much worse. Larry's a salesman. So Larry was not going to tell me how bad it was. So yeah, it was much worse. So we kept digging and digging and digging until we found, bedrock, and we couldn't change it anymore. And we did that in the United States first. And then we went to Europe and did it in Europe, where every manager in Europe called himself a CEO. So I'm the CEO of Oracle France. And I have, sales operations, I have education, I have support, I have, consulting. And that was all because they speak French. And in Germany, there was a CEO there. The CEO of Germany could decide not to sell Oracle applications in Germany because SAP is his biggest client. All the database revenue went to him, not to the corporation. And it's the way Larry set up the company in the early days, that each country, if an entrepreneur came to Larry and said, I'd like to sell Oracle software in France, said, great, you be the distributorship. I'll give you exclusive distribution in France. So my job was self-appointed, but I said, what I'm going to do is make this a corporation that can scale. So Europe is basically going to run with individual sales operations that can handle customers, but the consulting, the support, the education will all be globalized to be delivered, because you have a scaled consulting operation. You had a lot of consulting operations that could not get above 60%, 70% utilization because they were subscaled. You put it in a global operation under Robert Shaw, and now you can move consultants everywhere and get 80%, 90% utilization.
How did those conversations go with those self-appointed really CEOs? I mean, were any of them able to make that change, Ray, or did you just have to clean house and start over? Zero made it.
Oh yeah, I thought I could do it.
I bet you there were some pretty funny conversations having to listen to what they had to say.
So I had this meeting in Maastricht,
Belgium.
in Belgium, because that's where I think the European Union Treaty was created and all that. And so I said, let's go to Maastricht and get everybody together and figure out how to globalize this business, how to really get it to scale. We're talking about numbers that Oracle finally did achieve, but we didn't achieve in the time frame we wanted to. See, I think we spent 3 days without a shower in the same room with each other. We actually have a caricature, a cartoon of us all in the room, people throwing spitballs at each other and pencils at each other and just arguing like crazy. That's not the way. This business can't run that way, and yada, yada, yada. We came out of the room with an agreement that we would globalize certain functions and localize other functions, and that everybody agreed. And so we went out of the room saying, okay, that's the way it's going to work.
Did everybody agree though?
They agreed, but not one of them made the conversion. Not one of them. The head of the UK, France, I asked the head of the Netherlands to be the head of Europe. And I thought this would work because the Netherlands maybe are a little more neutral than the other. It just didn't work. So I had to hire somebody from the outside who came in from a model like this, who came in from both AT&T and Digital Equipment Corporation, where they had already globalized. And they already, these were sales functions in each country. That really worked and allowed us to scale. The transformation was done in the US within a year. I hired McKinsey. Booz Allen wanted the job, but McKinsey made a better presentation. I said, I don't want a strategy here. I want data. I have not met the salesperson yet who says they've lost to Sybase. Yet Sybase is growing at 60% and we're not growing. We're shrinking. So it's impossible. Tell me where they're winning, where we're losing. Tell me what the customers think of us versus what they think of Sybase. So I had all the data then within 3 months to present to the sales management of the United States.
What was the biggest shocking piece of the data that you found there?
Customers dislike this.
So did you tackle that first?
Tackled it first. Robert went out more than I did, but I went to a lot of customers and said, let's start over. We're not going to hold you to the contract anymore. We're going to start over, and we're going to start with the product you need, the product they loved the database. They loved the database product. But remember, the goal was, I've got to kill Sybase before I can build the big company, okay? And so I set my mind to it, and I think it was 2.5 years into it, I get a call from Larry. I'm in London, and it's like 3 a.m, and Larry's on the phone. It's over. It's over. It's done. It's gone. They're history. They had just missed their first quarter. They never came back. So I said, okay, let's start building the applications business, the consulting business. And that's really then when, I'd say in 1994, 95, 96 is really when we started that growth through 4 billion, 6 billion, 8 billion, to really grow it.
Was Robert Shaw brought in to run the applications business?
He ran the consulting business. There was nobody that really was the CEO of the applications business. So development groups that developed the database, tools to develop applications. That was another division. Applications, business applications. So these were all different development groups that reported directly to Larry. So the application group was actually controversial as to, whether it belonged somewhere else or it belonged in development or, who was running it. It was very controversial, but we ended up building a very, very large business. So, and then after I left, acquired Siebel and acquired PeopleSoft and basing it a 2-horse race. So today it's SAP or it's Oracle in terms of big ERP vendors, and then Salesforce for CRM.
One of the things that took place, I think, early on, which I think is really important, how setting up a leadership development program with Liz Wiseman helped get people engaged, break down silos, and something that they never even had before.
Again, we're now out of the turnaround stage. Okay. I knew this thing was, so first turnaround in the US, for me, 1.5 years, then another 1.5 years. And I feel like, okay, now we have a business model that can blow this thing up worldwide. We got consistent sales methodologies. We got a worldwide consulting group, a worldwide support group. We've got, this thing organized the way I thought we needed to be to scale. But there were still silos, development, consulting, sales. Everybody would point fingers. So we would bring out a new release of our applications, and the salespeople would immediately point fingers back to development saying, there's so many bugs in this thing, I can't sell it. And development would say, why not? Why can't you sell it? I mean, it's just like, this thing is, we developed it. It's the greatest piece of software ever, So nobody was talking to each other. And so I came up with a concept of basically getting everybody from different divisions and different parts of the companies into one class. Okay. And that class would last for a week. And then I'd do another one the next month. So I do 12 of these classes, 30 people per class. And the first day, I spend the whole day with them. Liz Wiseman put this together for me. So she was the person that organized it all. The first day, they'd all come in like this.
Like, what the heck am I doing in here? I'm missing a week of work.
This is a week of work. I mean, I should be in the field with my customers. I got a development schedule I got to keep. They're mad as hell to do this. They think it is mamby-pamby, worthless
Soft
crap, soft crap. So we sat, we for the first day, just go through what people think about in doing their job and how their job relates to the whole job. How, why do customers say the things they say about us? And why do developers believe that this and all? Okay, so we just let it all air out. And I used an outside facilitator. He had a methodology where he could bring everybody's opinions out and get them, aired out and on paper. And at the end of the first day, they're not mad anymore. They said, "Geez, I didn't know that. I didn't understand that." So they're kind of questioning. So at the end of the first day, I'd give them a problem. This is a real problem, okay, that we have to solve. I want a recommendation of how you would solve this at the end of the week. I'd come in the morning of the second day and I'd help them a little bit thinking through the problem. Well, what do you mean by this, Ray? What do you mean by what, and I could see them starting to tackle the problem. Now I know I got them, okay, because that was it. They're now starting to work on the problem. Every class did the same thing. They named their class and they named a class leader by the end of the second day. I was shocked that like these developers who thought this was all mamby-pamby bullshit, would say they're naming the class. So their class is going to compete against the one that comes in next month and next month and everything. And so on Friday, I would sit and listen to presentations. Okay, what's your solution? What it did was have them, first of all, appreciate what the other person has to go through. Our applications had 4,000 bugs. I mean, it just was odd. The support organization could not keep up with bug fixes. The customers are complaining. They're trying to fix it on the fly. They didn't think the development organization cared about all these bugs that it had. And so they started to understand each other and what the result of releasing applications before their time and they're tested, what the impact of that was on Oracle overall, the impact on the sales organization, the impact on the support organization, the impact on the consulting organization that has to go in and fix stuff. It says these applications, we had one division of GE who could not close its books. You just can't say bummer, sorry.
right.
I think those classes, I don't know how many we had. I'd say it went on for probably 30, 40, 50 classes that all went through this to where I got to the point where everybody got it. And then I would hold annual SVP meeting. If you were a senior vice president, you were important enough in an operation around the world, you'd come to this meeting. 800 people in one meeting. That we'd break it down and everything, but I would spend the first 2 hours just kind of getting across what we are going to do in the next year or the next several years.
How important was it for your participation in these classes for the overall success? We work with companies who spend a lot of money on training, and it's like pulling teeth, almost impossible to get somebody from the C-level to sponsor it or support it. They feel like it's not worth their time to do so.
I think it was an advantage that I was not trained at IBM. So I left IBM before I got into the heavy-duty management training program. I think that was an advantage. So you go through EDS in the Ross, we're in the jungle. Do you have a knife? Let's go. Okay. So I come in, I said, Larry, look, in some of the interviews maybe I've done with other people, maybe some people have come back and said, I don't know how to run a software company. Has anybody said that to you? Only one person said it to me. I said, well, that's remarkable because everybody should tell you, I don't know how to run a software company. He said, stick with me. I'm going to teach you how to run a software company. And he did. I fired a couple of people that said, you can't fire me. I'd work for Larry. I'm here with Larry. Larry's my buddy. Larry stood behind me. And so I have every, compliment in the world for him staying true to his promise of saying, I'm going to teach you this business. Trust me, it operates in a certain way. At the end of the first quarter, you're going to be frightened as hell. At the end of the fourth quarter, you're not going to believe what happens. It's just like he knew the business so well. And so on these classes, I just said, if I'm not there, this is going to be just viewed as an exercise that they will forget.
Or check the box.
Check the box. If I'm, going to spend a day and a half at the front and a day at the back of every class, they're going to take it more seriously. Plus, I believe I can inject at the right time the things that need to get them over the next hump and get them moving forward. So I think that was a big deal. Later on, I read, kind of like there were a lot of people in life that had, kind of managed from their office, and a lot of people that have managed walking around. And I just choose to be the one because I didn't know any better. Quite frankly, I did not know any better. Funny, I was a line manager at IBM. I go to Booz Allen and I'm kind of like viewed as having sharp elbows because I want to move things. I want to do things fast. Well, no, it's a collaborative environment. We discuss things. We get each other's opinion. So then I go to Oracle and I'm saying, so what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And it's like, people are saying, oh my God, I got it. It's just like, you have to, in an organization like this, you have to kind of say, this is what I want. This is where I think we need to go. And Liz later wrote a book called Multipliers. And the concept in her book was that there are people who are diminishers and people who are multipliers. Both are successful, both fail. But what I learned working for Ray is that he had a multiplier style. Now, what does that mean? Look, Larry has been super, super successful, but I think she would consider him a diminisher. So if someone came into Larry's office and offered an idea, Larry might say, I did not know when I got up this morning that I'm going to meet the stupidest person in the world. It's just like you went out of the office feeling, oh my God, did I fuck up? You come into my office with an idea, and I would say, what did you think about when you brought this idea? And have you thought about this? I'd ask many, many questions so that they would conclude themselves this was not a smart idea. And they'd walk out and they would come back with a better presentation because they wanted to impress. They wanted to prove that they weren't stupid.
But let me ask you this before you go further. How many people would come back to Larry's office with an idea after that?
By the way, one of the greatest leaders and my idol in Silicon Valley is Steve Jobs. Steve had the same style. If you came in with a dumb idea, no matter how small it was or how big it was, Steve would dress you down. Steve would just tear you apart. That's going to happen frequently because he's a lot smarter than you are. So I think, Liz had this concept of saying, okay, I see these two different styles. And so she invented this term called multipliers. The person that came in or the person that is working for you will work harder and will extend themselves if you kind of don't diminish them, but ask them the right questions, put them on the right pathway, help them develop an idea, and until you give up on them. Maybe they don't have the capability. But we had a lot of strong people. We had, Oracle has always had really, really strong people who are capable and need direction, just need to be they need to be told, okay, this is where we're going. Without that, it's like shooting off a bunch of guns that aren't directed anywhere. They're all very effective guns. But if you can channel them all the right direction, you have a Gatling, you have a machine gun. And so that's what Oracle needed most, was everybody kind of pointed the same direction and let's row together. It's not mamby-pamby. It is essential in a business that wants to scale.
In your wildest dreams, did you ever think it would scale from 2 billion to over 200 billion?
Well, you're talking about the market capitalization. No, there are videos and presentations of me on a stage saying, we're going to be worth $1 trillion. So So I should answer that question. Of course I knew her. 200, nothing. Okay. No, that was inspirational. That was totally, we should be owning the database business, essential, managing data, owning the applications business. Those applications should own the business intelligence business, and then a lot of consultants to make it happen. Boy, there should not be a more important company in the world than Oracle. And we just couldn't achieve that. We couldn't achieve that kind of respect because we just could never put it together and aim it in the right direction. We'd be off doing this, off doing that. We were the silos, everything we just talked about. We were losing on the mission, winning battles. So Oracle has a win-loss culture. If you win, not many people, when I came in, not many people asked you how you won. Okay, so the ends justified the means. What I said is, no, the means count. The means set you up to win many times. So you can have the right to come back and win again, and win again, and win again. It's not about the battle, it's about the war.
Exactly, right? Because if it's a zero-sum game, people aren't gonna wanna work with you next time. If you overpromise and underproduce, I mean, that's short-term thinking.
Right. Yeah, so I have good friends now that I still see. We go on a pheasant hunting trip every year to South Dakota. There's 18 of them used to work for me, and we're all friends now. We're friends before, but we're really good friends now, and we reminisce about, okay, what was it like when, Ray, you came in? What were we thinking? And every one of them says, hope he doesn't screw with my compensation. I said, really? That was your worry? Yes. I controlled my own compensation. It was totally in their control. They made up their own comp plans, their own quotas, and all Larry cared about is you're selling software. And prior to that, people that ran, like they were called the president of Oracle USA, it was about selling software. So there was a guy named Gary Kennedy, amazing sales manager, really, really brilliant, but he would have contests for gold bullion, like to keep the company growing at 200%. So it was very, very oriented toward winners stay, losers go. If you miss 2 quarters, you'd be fired. So that scared everybody, and it was about compensation. So I'm here to make a lot of money. So the people that work at every level, there's salesmen all the way through senior managers, every level made a lot more money than anybody else in the industry. The compensation plans were incredibly rich, and that kept people, and it was an exciting place to be. All during the 80s, the company was doubling it. Relational databases were like the lead technology, like AI is today, primarily to build applications outside of the IT influence. So back then, the CIO owned the mainframe data center, and he had a set of developers, and those developers would work on applications. There wasn't any prepackaged applications back then. So you get in line. If you want an application like for your business, it's going to be 2 years, 3 years before I can deliver it to you. And so Oracle was a godsend in that they had a relational database with tools to develop applications on mini computers in the departments. So I could skirt around the IT folks. And so I could build an application on an HP 3000 or a DEC PDP and avoid all the mainframe stuff. And so it was a great business for a long period of time. But when I came into it, it was like out for a pass, right? No huddle, out for a pass, and everybody runs the pattern. They run their own pattern. We brought it back to let's have a huddle and run the game plan.
Out of IBM, EDS, and Oracle, which one do you think you learned personally the most yourself?
Oracle. Yeah, Oracle.
Because of Larry or because what you were able to accomplish?
Yeah, the second. I think most of it in every experience, except for my early years in IBM, there was no training. IBM had great training. So I spent, I think it was 12 or 16 weeks programming, going all technical. It really helped me, by the way, when I got drafted in the Army, because I avoided carrying a rifle by running a logistics command and a computer installation. So I knew how to program. I knew it. IBM taught everything, and then they teach you business. I didn't have an MBA, so they would teach you balance sheet, P&L statement. How a business actually works, and then selling. So that was the last training I had, other than a few snippets where EDS. We had some classes on negotiating, things like that, but no really formal management training. And I think it's really, there are managers and there are leaders. I don't think I am a good manager. And I used to tell my people that a good friend of mine who goes on that South Dakota trip ran the United States for me. So he knows like things work like a Swiss clock. The comp plans go out at a certain time, and the quarterly reviews happen at a certain time by a certain format. He is a great manager. I don't do that. That's not me. I never had a quarterly review. I just thought there was a waste of time for people to lie to me. They would say, "Here's how well it's going here, let us tell you." And then when the boss leaves town, we go back to work. I says, "No, I'd rather kind of come to town and meet your biggest customers and let's talk about the business and where your problems are." And so I kind of developed the philosophy of be a leader, inspire people, say, "Here's what we can achieve." Okay. And it's your job to achieve it. Okay. Call me if you need help.
Do you think organizations need both managers and leaders, or you think they can get by with just leaders?
You need both. Yeah, I think you need both. I mean, really good manager people. Liz Wiseman, great manager. I'm not saying she's not a good leader. I'm just saying, wow, I could say, here's what I want. Here's the concept. Here's how it's going to work. Here's what we're going to do. Here's the time I'm going to spend. Put it all together.
And then they execute.
Huh, yeah. But at Oracle, I think it was, I spent 12 years at Booz Allen, spent 14 years at Kleiner Perkins, and I learned a lot about those businesses, the consulting business, running a consulting business, about venture capital. I learned a ton. But at Oracle, I felt like if I didn't do something every day that pushed the business forward, I'm gone. I felt like it was self-imposed. It wasn't Larry. It was me who I just self-imposed if you don't do this, no one else is going to do it. No one's going to change it's going to continue operating the way it is today. And so it was by trying things and doing things every year. It's trial and error, and I made a lot of mistakes too. I mean, there were certain functions, especially globally, that our applications didn't have to compete against SAP. So we took on partners, took on software partners. That was a mistake. These software partners, once you put it together as an integrated package, now if they don't perform, if they don't release their software integrated with our software, it just, you can't run multiple companies together when we're only 10% of their business. They don't care about you. And so it was a mistake.
When you were at Oracle, were you good at being able to own up to the mistakes you made?
I think so. I could have done it more. I just, like I'm human. And so it became one opinion against another. Okay. We really believed in what we were doing to move the company ahead. Technology was changing to much more of internet-based rather than on-premise based, trying to take our applications and transform them to online, thin client versus big server or on a big server. So going through that transition was rough, trying to sell software that really wasn't ready for prime time. Larry taught me a lot about the software business. It's a bit like the drug business. Okay. You've got to get them to use it and
Get them hooked.
get them hooked. Yeah. Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up here, we barely touched on Kleiner, great, but now you have GreatPoint Ventures. I'm just curious about when you and your partners bring in founders and CEOs, what is the number one thing, first and foremost, you're looking for, both maybe from a leader, Ray, but also the leadership team?
So I think in a founder, someone who's identified a problem they can solve. Okay. If they can't explain it in 30 seconds, and get me excited about it, that is a real telltale. Okay. It's like they're trying to explain the problem and the domain that they're familiar with and everything. You're 5 minutes into it and you haven't heard, what is it you do? Okay. That's a real sign. I'm not saying somebody needs to be a salesperson, but they need to be able to say, look, I have identified a huge TAM because this gap, this does not work. And this is a huge market if we can solve this problem. And then I want to know how big they think the company can be. Tom Perkins used to turn the business plan upside down and read the back page first. And you read, so that's where you see the forecast for the next 5 years. He said, well, if you believe the business is not only this big, then I'm not interested.
Then you're out. Yeah.
There are founders, there are entrepreneurs, and there are CEOs. And all founders are not entrepreneurs. Most are not. Founders are generally someone who has worked in a domain and recognizes there's a problem that they can fill. They can develop software or do something that they can actually solve the problem. That doesn't make them an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is someone who knows how to identify the market need, hire people, get what they need. Actually, they don't really have to understand the domain. They have to understand the problem and how to solve it and do it really, really fast. And then a CEO is somebody who knows how to scale a company. And so you see very frequently in our business that if you're a founder, they automatically think they are an entrepreneur and they are automatically a CEO. They call themselves day one a CEO. And they're not. They're not CEOs. And it's really legitimate if a founder says, you know what, I understand the problem. I'll get this off the ground. I can get customers to believe in our solution and all that. But to say, there are things I don't understand about how to scale the sales organization. Typically, it's go to market that they don't understand. They're typically technical developers. And so they think, okay, I'll just hire a VP of sales. I'll hire a head of sales and they'll take care of it. And that is the first major mistake that most technical founders make, is that they will just think the problem will handle itself by hiring a VP of sales. That VP of sales hires a few people. I'll get a guy that runs the West, a guy that runs the Midwest, a guy that runs the East, and they're off and running. And a year later, you haven't sold anything because these salespeople come in from other businesses. They're not trained in your product. I tell all of my founders, the first salesperson you hire and then the next 10, put them in development for 2 months. Now, they're not going to develop anything. They're not, but they're going to be on a development team understanding the software and understanding the value proposition, and understanding the solution. So when they go out, they're selling reality. They're selling what we have, not what the customer wishes it was, which happens all the time. Oh, yeah, we can do that. Oh, that's what you want? Yeah, we can do that too. Run back to development. Can you do this? Can you, it doesn't work. And they're bringing in bad habits from their last job. So typically a salesperson is hired because they had a territory. They know the customers. They're probably even respected by those customers. Then they come back in with a different color suit on and they say, hey, I'm from, and I want to sell you this. And the customer will typically listen to them, but they don't understand the product they're selling. So take the time to understand the product. Get really immersed in the product. In fact, I even have encouraged many founders, hire 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, without a lot of sales experience, but that have the hunger, and then teach them your product. So the only thing they know how to talk about is your product. It's had some success, especially with SDRs now. There's a lot of SDRs that sell on the phone. You can do that with young people. At the end of the day, they say, what did you learn today? What did you learn today? Let's help each other, be a team.
Well, Ray, this has been absolutely incredible. I guess my last question for you is, what are you excited about coming up when it comes to either somebody you're working with at GPV or what's happening with AI, or one piece of advice you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I never thought when I left Oracle, that I'd go to venture capital. There were three or four really, really important CEO jobs that I looked at, and one really significant one for the government, for President Bush.
NASA, right?
NASA, yeah, to run NASA. And I said, okay, if these things are not drawing me like immediately, if I'm not drawn to be a CEO somewhere and to run, companies that have 100,000 people or organizations that have 300,000 people, then what am I being drawn to? And I had remarried in 1995, had two children in 98 and 2000. And I said, I think the most important thing to me is to stay off of airplanes. So the guys at Kleiner asked me to come over and hang out. And I said, so you guys, the entrepreneurs come to you. I said, wow. Okay. So I'm just not going to, I'll be home when my kids are growing up. You work hard. I wanted to remain an important person in this industry. So I thought Kleiner was joining the New York Yankees, and I said so to the New York Times. I said, it's like joining the Yankees and feeling like really strong people, John Doerr, Vinod Khosla, people that were just, we all had individual reputations and came together as a really powerful group. After 14 years there, where I really learned the business and I really liked it because it was the blend of kind of line experience I had at Oracle and consulting experience I had at Booz Allen, because you're seeing something different every day, a new entrepreneur every day. It made sense because being in venture capital when you're 32 or 35 years old, you don't have a lot to offer to the entrepreneur.
You don't have the wisdom.
You don't have the wisdom. But at my age, I really enjoy helping these young people, and they go out and kill themselves. Okay. I work hard, but I'm not killing myself at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So it really started to feel comfortable to me because it wasn't my first choice. It wouldn't, if I were 40 years old, it wouldn't be my first choice. And then one of my CEOs, who was a serial entrepreneur, he had done 9 different companies.
I know Andrew Perlman, right?
Andrew Perlman.
That's how I met you. Yeah.
Okay. So I invested in one of his companies, the last company, and got to know him. And he came to me, he says, Ray, he said, why don't we start a venture firm together and do it in the style that you practice venture capital? Because when you were on my board, you helped me. You like rolled up your sleeves. You weren't, the other venture capitalists were on my board, were kind of watching their money and financial management and all that. But you went to China to raise money for me, and you went here and that. I said, look, Ted, I'm probably a better operator than I am a venture capitalist. So I'm probably not the greatest venture capitalist because it's maybe not the most productive thing I can be doing, but I can understand why an entrepreneur would appreciate it. And so that's what we did. 10 years ago, we formed GPV, GreatPoint Ventures, and it's been a real success. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, there's one thing I could tell is your passion and your voice behind it. How lucky it is for these founders to get an opportunity to learn from people like you, from Andrew, Avi Goldberg, who was also the one who introduced me to you.
It is a lot of fun for me. If I can get my life oriented toward those entrepreneurs, with helping identify them, helping work with them, that's kind of what I would love to do in what I have left in venture capital. Let the young people do the diligence, let the young people do the finding and, pipeline building and all that. I never thought I'd enjoy being old in a business.
Okay, so let me ask you this one last question. What is the ideal entrepreneur founder that should be reaching out to GPV?
Somebody who's solving a really, really big problem in healthcare or in the enterprise with AI. So generally we think of, AI, everybody's going to say this in venture capital today, but AI is a tectonic shift. I mean, it's a major shift in the way things are being done, much bigger than people think it's going to be. Okay. So we just then have a thesis about how that will play out in the healthcare world and how that will play out in certain industries. And so we focus on those business problems. We call it the thinking enterprise. What does the thinking enterprise look like? Where your job now in the enterprise is to basically think, and you have an extension of your brain in AI. Okay, so your job is to think, not to sit there and return emails all day. Your job is to think. AI will handle your email. Okay, and so what does the thinking enterprise look like? It'll have less people, it'll have more productive people, it'll have better thinkers in it. And I think healthcare is much the same, except it is the biggest spending industry in the US today that we have to do something about. It's just out of control. So that's where we want to spend our time.
I wish you the very best of luck, and couldn't agree more when it comes to healthcare. Anyways, Ray, thank you very, very much. And to everybody out there, as I always say, stay curious, keep learning, and thanks again, Ray.
In the case of Blockbuster, what really helped me probably more than anything else was an encounter with Warren Buffett. Here's Warren next to me, and I started playing the victim. Woe was me. I joined Blockbuster. He was like, "What are you doing now, Jim?"